that the quality and standards, and to ensure that the public spaces are in good shape and public order is maintained, to deal with the issues of harassment and so on. And the Tourism Enhancement Fund is now responsible not to be the ATM of tourism, as was anticipated by some, but is now to look at the business of human capital development, training, and the innovation, and the management of the whole technological driven tourism that we're anticipating. And of course, JAMVAC is fully now charged with cruise, fully responsible to build out the cruise architecture that we spoke here. Therefore, you need to have a separate entity that deals now with regulation, legislation, and deal with the whole business of ensuring standards and quality control, and also to make sure that the promise that we made in the market is supported fully here with a framework of rules and regulations that guide how we operate. So what we're saying then is a new tourism will emerge with a new driving purpose, with a new regulatory and legislative framework, and with a new mindset for service driven by the technological advancements of our time, and supported by a community development strategy that will see tourism being an inclusive industry and moving from what we had called an extractive industry to now be an extracting industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Bartlett. It is wonderful to have you here. Always love having you with the young people here, always able to hear from one of our very, very important ministers. And you notice he's laying out a vision for the future. We've done a lot in tourism. He's achieved a lot. The 5x5 was something that was difficult, looked very difficult and daunting. And he's been able to get it to happen. And no, he's not stopping there. He could just stop and celebrate. Look at where we are. No, he's now pushing the envelope even more. And I think that's what I want my young people to learn from this and from being here today. So even when you set yourself a really difficult goal and you get there, you now set another one. And that's how we develop and grow as a country. We continue pushing the envelope and continue pushing for more and more. And for those of you who don't know, and especially for the young people and those at home who are watching us, just reminding you that Minister Bartlett first became Minister of Tourism in 2007. But he was also this. He did PostCap. He was Minister of Information before. Did you all know that? He was Information, Broadcasting and Culture. He was also Minister of Youth, Sports, and Community Development. So he has other things that he did before that all paved the way. And I said culture too, yeah, and culture. That paved the way for him to be such an amazing Minister of Tourism. And, you know, we're so very happy to have him here. And he hasn't just done, you know, wonderful things for Jamaica, but this notion of resilience in tourism, and we now talk about it a lot in education too. But tourism resilience, that whole concept was coined by our minister. And he took it around the world, and the entire world has bought into it. He also set up global tourism resilience and crisis management centers around the world. So he's not just, you know, an icon in Jamaica. He's a global icon in terms of tourism. And that's what I want you to be striving for, to be really world known and to put Jamaica on the map in terms of intellectual rigor to understanding, coining new concepts, and developing a way of looking at these concepts. And that's why I'm happy this morning, because I get to have the Honorable Ed Bartlett here. I usually get him at lunchtime on a cabinet day. I usually sit beside him for lunch. I learned a lot just sitting beside him and eating beside him. And so it's nice to have him here this morning and for you to get to hear that vision of tourism. We've gone far, but we feel we can go even further. And the minister has laid out a plan. He told you about the rooms. It's not an empty plan. 20,000 new rooms, and these are rooms that are ongoing. They're being built. When you go down to Montego Bay, you see them coming out of the ground. And he also spoke about the improved airlifts. He's the one that's been championing a lot of that. And also rooms for the workers. That is so important. The tourism workers, they're integral to this entire process. And we are focusing as an administration on making sure that they have good housing, so they're not left out of this entire development. And that also includes the pension program that was pioneered by Minister Bartlett too, so that our tourism workers don't work for years and then have no pension. So, Minister Bartlett, you can see I'm happy to have you. And it's good to have you here. It was good to have Minister Samuda, and we now open up for questions. You don't usually have Minister Bartlett, so let's get started with questions from the media.
Janelle Lawrence, Observer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Minister Bartlett, how will tourism workers qualify for these new housing solutions that you have said will be built? And what assurances can you give that the program will be accessible to the average worker in the sector?
Right. So yesterday I mentioned that we are in discussion with some of our mortgage houses on the matter of what we call patient mortgage, which is an interesting concept. It's not very prevalent around, but it's something we're examining to enable our workers who, at the moment, are at the lower end of the income scales to be able to afford the houses that are being built. The other thing is the type of units that are going to be built. In the case of the 1,500 units from Grange Pen, we're going to have them in 3 different categories. One will be like a starter home with one bedroom, and the second will be a 2-bedroom, and of course the next is a 3-bedroom. So there will be 960 of the 1-bedroom types. So that will enable our workers to afford more of it. And that kind of structure is the way forward in building these whole houses for our workers. But it is not going to be the feature throughout because of what I just outlined to you in terms of the capacity building and how we want to certify and classify workers in the industry so their remuneration can change. It's to create a whole new ecosystem around the labor market for tourism workers.
Thank you. Any on this side?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Here is Stuart, Nationwide News here. Question to Minister Bartlett. Your opposition counterpart during her sectoral presentation, Andrea Perkis, highlighted 2 areas that you did speak on a bit during your presentation a while ago that I'd like you to go more into detail on. She mentioned cruise shipping as a part of the tourism sector, saying that our market share has dipped. And she was also raising the issue of transportation, saying that she believes that JUTA and transportation entities such as those have been kind of sidelined by in-house transportation being brought in by some hoteliers. How do you respond to those 2 claims?
Well, firstly, as a rule, I don't respond. I act and proact. And if you listen to how we have sought to put those concerns to rest. We have been deliberate in terms of discussing with you the expansion of cruise and the fact that cruise recovery will have 1.5 million cruisers. The best Jamaica has done is 1.6 million in 2017 or something like that. And so any informed analysis of cruise would speak to the heavy disruption that cruise has suffered since COVID and the change that has also taken place. So if you even understand a little bit about the cruise industry, you would appreciate that Jamaica's Western Caribbean itinerary has been totally disrupted by Cayman not having a port that can accommodate the size vessels that we have coming to us in Falmouth. That Labradee, which was the next one in Haiti, is also not available because of crime and other conditions in Haiti. So Jamaica is like a port on its own trying to survive. And so for us to have 1.1 million visitors last year was magnificent. So, you know, statistics you can lie with, you know, you can play with statistics. But it shows a bit of perhaps naivety or a little greenness maybe, and we understand that. The other issue in relation to the ground transportation. The ground transportation is need for a good overhaul. And in Tourism 3.0, we are going to look at the ground transportation because one of the areas that Local First is going to focus heavy on because it is an area over which Jamaicans have comparative and competitive advantage if dealt with properly. The system as it stands now, and our Minister of State, Tova Hamilton, will have that as part of her responsibility as well, to work through and to sit with these players, because the expansion of the ground transportation has been phenomenal in the last 10 years. When I became minister first, there were just about 2,000 licensed operators. It's now 6,000. So consider how that structure is. And the problem with it is that we don't have companies that are operating per se. We have individuals. And the hotels have a difficulty trying to make a contract with 6,000 individuals. So part of what we need to look at is how to structure the ground transportation arrangement so that it is possible for contracts to be developed and carried through properly. And I agree that Local First is going to speak to much of the anomalies that now exist in the ground transportation system.
Thank you. And my second question would be to both of you, I guess. How have well, I shouldn't even say preparations, because the hurricane season has begun. How would you gauge where your sectors are right now in terms of preparing for a potential disaster? And
I really should have said that when I started my comments. So thanks for the question. Currently, we are at 80% of our inventory. We have about 11 hotels that are to come back on stream, and they are beginning to come in a structured way starting July. So July we'll have a first set coming back, then August, September, October, and finally December and what we call the first quarter of 2027. So by the first quarter of 27, meaning the latest February of next year, all the hotels that were out will be back, except Catalonia, which was extensively damaged. And what they are doing is literally to rebuild the hotel and to add 270 new rooms. So in 2028, when Catalonia comes back, it will be virtually a brand new, bigger and better hotel. In the meantime, Unico, the newest hotel to be constructed, will be ready for December 15. When you pass there, at Lilliput, you'll see the work is very, very well advanced. So that will make up for the gap that Catalonia would have provided. So we can say we'll be pretty much 100% back in terms of our inventory.
All right. We're not that lucky in education. We had over 400 schools that we're currently trying to fix at the same time. It is very difficult to fix all of them. During the summer when the students are out, the contractors will be working quite a bit to get our schools back. But because of the damage, some of the schools, the timeline is over a year in terms of rebuilding them. So we are obviously in the ministry having to pray a lot. But at the same time, we pray and we prepare. So we've had to be looking at our resilience plans. We're now being hailed around the world as one of the best education systems in terms of resilience. So no matter what's thrown at us, we pivot and we continue. But that takes preparation. It takes a lot of work. And so the ministry would have, made some adjustments to our resilience plans. Those are being rolled out. And in terms of the reconstruction for those schools that have been finished, there are new standards around the reconstruction of schools. So we have new building standards for schools. That makes it more resilient. So we know that those schools should not have any issues if there is a hurricane. But we continue. We have our learning kits. We have many different resources that we can use if there is disruption in the system. And that's really the posture we have to take, one of resilience and ready for whatever climate throws at us.
Observer, going back to the matter of the housing solutions, is there a specific criteria, let's say for instance, like a salary threshold that has to be met in order for the tourism workers to qualify for one of the houses, or is it just a matter of, just solely being a tourism worker?
Just being a tourism worker. And if you earn 30% or more of your income from tourism, you qualify. So the craft entrepreneur can qualify. The Juta Jekyll taximan who supplies tourism by way of transfers can qualify. You work at the airport and you're a red cap, you can qualify. Jamaica's tourism perhaps is the broadest of all industries in the world when it comes to worker benefits.
Okay. And going to, I know you'd have stated that you're moving towards we are moving towards a more resilient environment for the tourism sector. With regards to the hotels, we're in the hurricane season right now, we're approaching it. Is there any building standards or building codes that are being given to the hoteliers for them to say, build their hotels in a way that is resilient to natural disasters, let's say like one such as Hurricane Melissa?
Excellent question. And in fact, one would say that conventional wisdom would determine that the hurricane having come and hit you the way it did, you are going to build back better and stronger and more resilient. But insofar as the ministry itself giving a direction, we haven't done that. And perhaps that's something that TPDCO might want to take on, yes.
And follow us in education. All right. Well, thank you. It seems like there's one more. Okay. Yeah. There's another question.
Yes. Good that the students ask questions. Yes, very good.
Good morning. Jeremy Francis representing the UMONA Guild. My question to you, Minister, is in regards to Jamaica being recognized as a growing tourism leader. What advice would you give us as university students in terms of the emerging career fields due to Jamaica becoming a global tourism leader? what areas would you recommend us to pursue?
Right, excellent question. And you're at the right place. You're at the center of knowledge. And one of the things that I wanted to have said was that tourism is driven by ideas. And we spend a lot of time now in honing ideas, and identifying, mining ideas, finding ideas, and then we bring them in and we incentivize ideas. We have a budget in TEF that actually deals with innovation, and we have established a tourism innovation incubator where young people like yourself with ideas but no financial backing, no collateral, can come in, put your ideas on the table, and then we offer you the opportunity to convert those ideas into meaningful and practical experiences and products. And then we allow you to either go off into working with another company that has a similar view as you, or we enable a startup through Exim Bank, where we have a portfolio for small and medium tourism enterprises. So I would say for you, focus heavily on the technologies and how the technologies are going to create greater efficiencies in the industry and creating new products and experiences, because that's what tourism is driven by, experiences. People travel all over the world to consume experiences at a price. So spend much of your time now looking at AI, yes, and how AI can make the difference in terms of our marketing. You can come up with some new tools for the JTB to be able to converse with visitors and to potential visitors all over the world and provide information transfer in real time. In fact, nanotime, right? Because that's how fast. And then one final thing that I wanted to look at is the issue of reputational resilience. How do you help to protect the reputation of people as a result of misinformation, disinformation, fake news, deep fake? And now you don't know. Every time we go to the social media, we wonder, is it true? Is it real? And then anything and everything can be said about you and the destination. How do we manage that? And the cost of dealing with reputation damage is humongous. Donovan will tell you the millions that it costs us to deal with a false representation of our destination. We have something called travel advisories. You know them? And the travel advisories in many instances about a single section of the country, far removed sometimes from the center of tourism. But it defines the country. So we have now to develop. I've written a book on it actually, right? On destination, reputation, resilience. But it's something that I think we need to think deeply about, because we are the victim. And if you can't manage that process, recover from it, first of all, to identify it, to mitigate against it, to manage it when it hits you, to recover quickly, and then to take your reputation to another level. So it's a whole science now around it, and I want you to think it through as a student in the institutions where knowledge is critical to us. But the most important part of knowledge, as Minister of Education will tell you, is your ability to convert the knowledge into meaningful and practical things. I told my students that you cannot graduate until you innovate. That's what must be at the heart of all of you students who are doing hospitality at university and elsewhere. Innovation, innovation, innovation.
Thank you. What a lovely answer. Good question. Oh, another one. Former Minister of Youth. I think you'd be happy to see the young people ask questioning their ministers.
Yes.
It's good morning, everyone. Nashe Baker from CMU. With the current projection for the growth of the tourism, maritime, and logistic industry, what pathways or initiative will be put in place to ensure internships for students studying within said sectors to allow them to hone and develop their skills? And with the high demand globally and regionally for graduates within these sectors, what measures are the ministry exploring to retain our graduates and local talent?
Well, Tourism 3.0 is speaking to that because, well, let me say you're lucky, CMU, because you have a graduate from tourism as your president. Professor Spencer worked with me as Dr. Spencer, and he left me as Professor Spencer. So we spoke a bit about the maritime tourism, and you will feature very heavily, especially with the kind of discussions we are now having with our cruise partners in relation to the development of cruise in Jamaica. We're going to be having new ports established. You know, Prime Minister indicated that on a map when he spoke in Parliament where these new ports are going to be. And certainly with Lucy being designated as a maritime tourism center for the country, you from CMU will no doubt have a good role to play there.
All right, we'll take the last two questions now.
Morning, everyone. Mahir is still at Nationwide News. Again, question to Minister Morris Dixon. 2 days ago, we were here. You told us that there's going to be a committee in place at some point focused on the education of boys. With that said, what's your reaction to the fact that 7 of the top 10 performing PEP students are indeed boys?
Happy
All
about
right.
that.
So, again, thank you for asking that question so that I can bask in the happiness of our children who did so very well in PEP, and especially those in the West. As you saw, many of the children, a third of those who did PEP, were affected severely by Hurricane Melissa. And for them to be so resilient and to do so well says so much about them, about their parents, their teachers, the school community. Our boys, generally, when we look on the data, same for PEP and for CSEC and CAPE, we see the fact that our boys are performing below the level of our girls. We see it in the tertiary institutions. When you go into the classroom, you see more girls than you see boys. It is very important that we understand this issue and to actually treat with it. As I said earlier this week, you cannot have a successful country with one gender moving and the other not. Mm-hmm. Both have to be rising together. And so that's why we're putting together the boys committee. I'm happy that I saw the top 7 of the top 10 being boys. That's amazing, and that is really good. But what that tells us is that our boys can achieve at the level of the girls. And we have to put in place programs across the board that deal with this. We have some schools that are trying different innovations. They're structuring the classroom differently, doing more breaks. You have some schools that have actually split boys and girls during the PEP years. Some of them are seeing results. We have to study those results more. But we also are doing it very scientific. In the ministry, we use data to move forward. And that's why the big event that we're doing in November with the rest of the Caribbean ministers of education and UNESCO is important, because across the Caribbean, this is a phenomenon that we see with the boys underperforming the girls. But we believe that it's something that we can fix, and we're going to look at global studies to look at how we can deal with it here. It's an interesting problem to have, because around the rest of the world, it's an issue with girls having access to education and social mobility. But in our country, we see it, women dominate management posts. We're leaders in women in management in the world. So we've done some good things. Now we have to turn our eyes to making sure that our boys feel as empowered. And so congratulations to those 7 boys who are doing so wonderful and at the top. And, you know, we just have to continue to make it happen and use it as an example that our boys can achieve really big things too. We just need to support them.
Last two.
Yes.
Annie Osborne from Jamaica Observer.
Sure.
Minister Bartlett, just now you mentioned taking attractions inland as your plan, as a part of your plan for resilience. I was wondering if you anticipate any challenges with taking inside tourism attractions, taking inland tourism attractions, when many tourists probably think of Jamaica, they think of beaches, white sandy beaches. So do you anticipate any challenges as such? And if you do, what would you do to counter that?
Right. So we made a point of the diversification away from the coastal areas where there is vulnerability. But most of Jamaica's real attraction, the geophysical features, are in the rural areas. And so we're developing a strong community tourism policy that you'll hear more about. As a matter of fact, David Dobson is here, who is the big mind behind that in our ministry. So through Spruce Up on the Corner, which is a program that we have about funding small community projects, and we've funded some 417 community projects across Jamaica already and spent a little over $1 billion on it. So what will happen, because Jamaica, and here I'm going back to NARA, because I'm really excited about the prospects of NARA really making a change in terms of our infrastructure in the country. The road networks that are being contemplated will now connect more of rural Jamaica to our entrepôts. That is the airport in Montego Bay, the airport in Kingston, and a new airport that is going to be built at Vernon Field in Clarendon. So all of that will enable greater access into the deep rural areas. We're doing bypass roads, which would remove the bottleneck from some of the coastal areas and open new areas in rural Jamaica so that development can take place. So you would see that because we're not an enormously large country, you're going to have, I would say, an hour and a half or so distance in time between airports and almost any area of Jamaica. From here going to the southeastern side, into St. Thomas, into Portland, with the road system that we have now, an hour and a half from the airport. From here going to Ocho Rios, across the north-south highway, an hour and a half. From Ocho Rios to Montego Bay, an hour and a half. That's what we're talking about. So that will enable us, the visitors, to have access to all of the attractions anywhere in Jamaica that they are.
All right. And if I can just add, usually every time I do post-cab, Minister, I always remind people of the reduction in crime. So everything is integrated.
Yes.
As a country, all that effort we have put into bringing crime down
Yes.
is going to be beneficial on the tourism side,
yeah.
because all this investment in the communities is facilitated by lower crime, and so people can have that greater perception of safety. So everything matches back. We're working quite holistically as a government.
Very well said. Minister, I just wanted to add this because you mentioned the security. You know, Jamaica has had the unfortunate reality of being classified in these travel advisories in very unfavorable ways. And The big one that concerns us most is what we call the ABC countries, the ones that come from America, Great Britain, and Canada. And I'm very proud to tell you that the latest version of the travel advisory from the US is have Jamaica at category 2, which is the next best position to be in globally. But they have revised the narrative, eliminating many of the places that previously would have been on the list of no-goes for American visitors. And the reason for that is the strong improvement in visitor safety resulting from the massive reduction, the 40-odd% reduction in crime in Jamaica. So see the correlation between crime and the perception of the destination as being safe and secure. And that perception is reflected practically, because a travel advisory is sometimes the Bible that a visitor uses to determine which destination to go. So I thank you for mentioning that, so I can make the point that continuing this crime reduction will inure to a greater sense of reputational integrity for Destination Jamaica.
Thank you. And we'll go to our last question from Roots FM.
Good morning, everyone. Adiri Truth from Roots 96.1 FM. My question is to Minister Morris Dixon. With PEP placements being released, for parents who may have questions or concerns about their child's placements, what guidance can you offer? And can you say whether there are avenues for them to seek any clarification or assistance?
All right, sure. Thank you for that question. And, you know, I turned off my phone after results came out, but then when I turned it on, the messages came through. So I did have some parents who were asking about the schools that their children would be going to. And that's normal. That happens every year. That we go through it as a ministry. What we'd say to parents is the new report gives a lot of information where your child is. It tells you what they're struggling with, what they need assistance with. Go through that report first. Talk about it with the child's teacher. We also have regional offices. There are 7 regional offices. You can go to any of our regional offices. You can sit with our regional team. They'll go through it with you. I know there are persons who are requesting transfers. Those are based on the schools. That's school level transfers, and persons are able to do that. There are very limited spots though from there. But if you want to understand what it means for your child and you want to understand that paper that you get in more detail, please reach out to our regional offices. We are more than happy to help you to understand it even better. But the children did better, right?
Yes.
So the competition to get
Yes.
to all of the schools that all of you dream of going to has gotten even stronger. What would get you into, let me pick a school, St. George's College. A few years ago, you need a higher score now. That's how good the students are doing, and our primary school students are also doing superb. They are doing very well, and so, you know, that competition is there, but we're here to explain to parents and to walk with them on this journey.
Right.
Thank you.
I want to say one little thing on that. Minister Dana is going to be the guest speaker for my 30th anniversary of the PEP Awards in my constituency on the 10th of July. Every year we do it for the last 30 years. And this year we have a little over 100 students from 14 schools in the constituency that are high achievers, not just that they are placed, but we have something called a 90s club and an 80s club. So you only get awards from me if you're in the 80s club and the 90s club. And we have over 100 this year. So I just thought I'd do that little bit.
I don't see it in the diary yet, but Crystal and Blake are here, so I figure they'll figure something out. But that's another thing for the young people. And another reason why I really admire Minister Bartlett. When you talk to him one night after an event, I had the pleasure of having dinner with him, and I said to him, what do you want your legacy to be? And he said, educating the people in my community. He spends so much time and effort on education. He focuses on scholarships for people in his constituency. He has introduced me to attorneys and doctors who came from his constituency and who he supported through school. And he truly understands that our development really rests in people. And that's one of the many reasons why I admire you so much, Minister.
That's my
and
life.
that will be definitely your legacy. I see them all over the place and they say, you know, I was one of his scholarship students, and that's as great a legacy as any. So thank you, Minister. Thank you for
very
being
much.
here. You're always welcome to come
Thank
to
you, guys.
PostCab.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And so, as always, we are ending PostCab a little bit later than usual, but it was a good morning. We heard a lot. We heard from Minister Samuda countering some of the narratives out there in as clear a manner as he could. And we also had the one, the only Ed Bartlett, the Minister of Tourism for the entire world. And we also were able to get some really good questions in this morning. And so I thank you for joining us. We'll see you at our next post-cabinet press briefing. And as always, may God continue to bless this wonderful country, Jamaica, land we love. Thank you all.